Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of 4400. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, I never realized this until last week until someone pointed it out. I guess I've Googled this show just for the sake of looking up the episode titles when I'm putting them in the titles of the reviews. I never noticed that this show isn't called The 4400. It's just called 4400. I didn't know they dropped the from the reboot. That's interesting. I've been calling it the because even at the beginning, just referring to it as 4400 feels weird because I want to say the in front of it, like the 100. I don't just call the show 100. You know, it has that same feel to it. It just feels weird. I'd never noticed that because even on the CW app, it's just 4400. You Google it, it's just 4400. I've just always subconsciously added the because the original series is called The 4400. You know, it's just like Charmed. They never changed, they never added like a subtitle to it or whatever for the reboot. They just kept it Charmed. So that's why I'm like, I guess in my head, I just didn't think they changed much of it. Tangents and all that aside, we get introduced to the new person who's kind of acting as the liaison between things, and that's Mr. Green, and he's setting up a program that's kind of like a temporary, release, but we'll keep eyes and ears on them type of situation, and like certain housing arrangements. It's like, yeah, they're all basically on parole, but eventually they're just going to be 100% set free. And now it's them trying to, now they've all been assigned with different things to see, you know, what setting up their housing arrangements. Like Jarrell is set up with Claudette, and Keisha is set up with Shanice, which I love that she wanted to switch, and Jarrell's like, oh no, having to deal with the whole getting a guy's ex-wife to move in with him and his current wife. Nah, I want no piece of that drama. It's like, that is a complicated situation. But I did think it was sweet that like Andre wanted to spend his last day with Shanice, because he's like, regardless of whatever we are, I just want to enjoy this day together. So like, right, go out. He showed her the probation tunnel, not probation, prohibition tunnel is what I meant to say, that led them outside. And she was kind of scared at first, but he's like, no, let's just kind of see the city, especially if it's going to be like our last day, like potentially hanging out, because she's going to be moving in. Because it was actually Mariah's idea to move Shanice into their like, rather than her being locked down in a hotel, why not let her stay here? It gives me an opportunity to know her, and it puts her parents in an awkward position. Especially when word comes out, well, when eventually the government wants to talk to Mariah because they found out the video came from her. Granted, she sent the video and she just, like, you know, just spread it. So she's just one cog in all of this. It's not like she was the original. Even though it started with her because LaDonna sent it to her first, but still. She just shared a video, so it's not that she was sent. It's not like she, like, stole it from the government. It's just like she, you know, so... But it still presents issues later on when Logan's like, she did that. Which even Shanice is like, you shouldn't have done that. Like, what? You could have gotten in so much trouble. But she's like, I'm a minor, so I didn't have to worry about it. But then Logan's pissed because it's like, the fact is, how can, like, I want to keep my daughter as far away from all this type of stuff. I mean, she's literally being questioned by the government like she's a problem. And it's like, I don't want that trailing to my daughter. And like, you're going to move in with us? Like, she won't be, like, she'll get caught up in all of this. Which I think is interesting considering, like, you let Hayden... Well, to be fair, Shanice kind of changes her mind later on. But I think it's like you're offering... You let Hayden take the room, but I guess it's like, right, he's a kid. Like, how much of a security threat could he be? I think it also comes from Logan's perspective of, like, right, like, his own issues with Shanice because he still believes that she just abandoned their family because of that letter. But... to be fair, it's like, it's more so because Shanice didn't want to take the room. It's just because of their complications. But like, yeah, Hayden being there would present the same issues that Shanice would. But I think it's just the personal issues of just kind of like the awkwardness of like having Shanice specifically there. But things are complicated for Shanice as well because whatever it is between her and Andre, it's like, regardless of anything, it put things in perspective for her when they ended up going to that Pride parade. And it's like, right, regardless of anything, I'm still married to Logan, you know? It's like, You know, she's like, normally I would want him to be, you know, happy and remarried and stuff like that. I would want him to move on. But the complicated thing is, it's like, it's not like you left by choice. It was against your will. Two, the fact of the matter is, if you were dead, it'd be different circumstances, but you're alive and well. You time traveled to 16 years into the future. There's no manual on how to handle this when, like, your significant other's moved on without you. It's a complicated thing. But even Andre's like, at the end of the day, whatever tomorrow brings, but he goes to, like, cover Shanice up later on. She's like, oh, thanks, Logan, I love you. And just, it's complicated. He had his love in the past with Cynthia, but, like, it's like, right, like, it's a hard situation because it's not like her love for Logan isn't going to, like, it's been like a week or two. Like, for her, it's like a week or two ago, I was still married. We still technically are married, but also it's like, to me, we are married because we were just married yesterday for me, but it's been like, and in totality, it's been like, you know, 1 or 2 weeks at this point, but it's like been 16 years. So that's not going to go away immediately, and that's going to complicate things because her and Andre were friends, and now it's like, this complicates things because, like, right, you're feeling things for Shanice, so the question is, what do you do, knowing that she's still in love with her husband, and just everything's complicated, you know, that type of, that doesn't just disappear overnight, you know, so I'm curious to see how this affects Shanice and Andre going forward. But other elements to this episode is we have Soraya coming back, but she's not her usual chipper self. She was put through the ringer because of all the questions, because she talked about, like, right, being treated like she was being accused of treason and stuff like that. Have your peers even look at you like, oh, you're guilty. And because LaDonna was like, hey, yeah, can you help me out? She's like, really? You betrayed my trust. And it's like, hey, I'm offering you a real apology. She's like, I've watched enough of you on reality TV to know when you're, like, faking it, like, a bad. So this isn't a real apology. Because LaDonna didn't think about the consequences of her actions, of what that would do. Like, not only did Soraya get in trouble, she also realized now that she's put their circumstances on blast to the public, not everyone was going to be receptive of it. It's like the X-Men thing of, like, oh, you're freaks, like, oh, like, there's something on going, like, you know, people who are neck deep into some probably, like, government conspiracy theories are like, oh, like, do later on, it's like, oh, you alien lizard people. You know, yes, he's a drunk, crazy guy. But yeah, like, yeah, he might be a drunk, crazy guy, so he's not representative of everyone, but also it's just kind of like, yeah, your circumstances are weird. There are going to be a whole bunch of conspiracy theories about you. I mean, another example would be, like, look at Manifest, like, how they got treated. Half the public thought, like, oh, you guys are something else. The other side of the public thought, like, oh, you were basically angels or something like that. So it's that perspective of things of, like, yeah, it might be one dude, but it's indicative of, like, yeah, there's probably other people that feel that way too. Just no one's drunk enough and at a bar to, like, call you calling you an alien lizard thing, and also referring to Claudette as a bitch until she, like, smashed him in his face, which rightfully deserved. But yeah, LaDonna was like, yeah, I didn't think about the consequences that would arise. I mean, she probably didn't even think about the fact is that Mariah would get in trouble like she did. Like, if she had probably gone to, like, Soraya for help, Soraya probably would have willingly helped her, probably would have done a better job of covering their tracks. But LaDonna was just like, she kind of let her emotions get the best of her, and she was trying to make up for, like, right, I made the mistake of presenting this 4400 situation like it was all kosher, everything was good, when in actuality it wasn't. So, of course, she wanted to try and make up for that, and it's like, right, you just didn't think about the consequences that would follow because of that. You know, and now, I mean, hell, even Hayden's kind of getting the rougher end of it too, because the guy comes in there snatching stuff out. It's like, right, like, you making us look bad, like, these good, hardworking people are going to lose their jobs because of you. You don't want that, do you? Or you could give me the name of your friend who stole this government property to make these chess pieces for you. But Hayden was kind of... We still don't know much about Hayden's circumstances. We do know that, like, people in power and, like, being locked up isn't something... Like, being poked and prodded is something he talked about not liking. So, these circumstances must not be too different from what he must have been in, like, dealt with in his original time, because it's just something they still haven't really thrown, like, into the mix what that really is. Other angles to this is we did see Jarrell and Claudette kind of bond in this episode, because she opens up a little bit more about being married to her husband, and the fact is that she never actually lived on her own. She went from being in her parents' house to living with her husband. The only time she ever had her to herself. And obviously she talks a little non-fondly of her husband just because, like, right, that's why she's not too fond of our Rev, because he reminded her too much of her own husband. That's like, right, you do this not for people but for power. And but for her, she enjoyed those weekends alone, and she's just like, oh, like, it just, like when she hear his car cranking him leaving for like the little summit things that he would basically go through with like other religious leader, like with other leaders, she enjoyed it so much. And because also you could tell she feels a little bad because Jarrell's like, yeah, like, people are treating you like your threat, but it's like, no, I trust you. I can see, like, she feels bad because it's like, right, we are hiding this secret about ourselves, but, can't let him in on Superpower Club, But obviously it all comes out later on when Keisha, because Keisha had already seen some of it already, but she couldn't explain what she had witnessed before, but now she saw Claudette's hand and how she had recovered from her wound, and she ended up talking to Jarrell about, which Jarrell had talked with Soraya early in the episode. It's like, maybe it wasn't the song, maybe it was the singer, kind of realizing like maybe it was Noah that actually put them to sleep. And now with what Keisha found out about Claudette, he tells her like, no, I know about your whole situation, and he even gave her Manny's place, because it's like, right, it was going to be like up for rent, because like the rent was going up, but also like someone else would have had to it would have had to be given to someone else in that time. But then like with her, it gets used, and he also gets to keep Manny's place, and it also gets to belong to someone who needs it. Because he had talked about it, once again, it's like, he still hasn't fully given up on the Manny thing. Because he's like, right, if you guys are here, there's at least some part of me that believes that everything's going to work. Like, that there's still hope that Manny's out there somewhere, But he tells Claudette, like, we know, and she's like, oh, Keisha had opened it. And it's like, yeah. But he promises, like, no, me and Keisha are on your side. Like, you guys are being, like, we know, like, you guys aren't a threat, so they're going to do whatever they can to actually help them out. Because that actually goes really nicely with Keisha's side of things, how complicated things are for her in this particular episode. Because she's always been dealing with the loss of her sister, but we basically get, like, flashbacks to her around, like, her nieces, as well as her sister, Kenya. But it turns out, like, her sister Kenya was trying to get her to buy a coffee shop, and kind of like, it's like, oh, go chasing your dreams. But Keisha was reluctant, because Keisha, in the grand scheme of things, is never willing to take a risk. And it's like, right, you and Tariq, your situation's always been unstable. She's like, right, like, don't use us as an excuse just because you're too afraid to, like, take a leap. And that's kind of that's a big part of this, because Tariq told her this episode that he wanted to visit the guy that was responsible for killing Kenya, because he's found religion and he wants to apologize. But for Keisha, it's like, I'm not going to forgive that guy. He's exactly where he needs to be. And that's why she's on that heightened level of like, right, I'm just trying to make sure everyone's okay. Because even later on, she tried to tell Hayden, like, if there's anything I need to know, just let me know, because I'm trying to protect everyone. And Hayden was like, I don't like to lie, but I don't like being lied to. Because at that point, she's treating everyone else here like they are criminals, like, because she was dealing with what she was dealing with this episode. Like, maybe if she hadn't, I think it's already been a part of her, but this whole situation with the guy that killed her sister, like, I think it added more fuel to the fire that was already there. So she was, like, in her mind and her heart, she was already burning a little hotter this day, more so than any other. Because for her, and she confronts Tariq about it near the end of the episode, it's like, how can you, like, want to, like, talk to the person that killed my sister? Like, even saying, like, oh, did you even love my sister? And it's like, no, like, Kenya died. She didn't even die going to the library. She died coming home from the coffee shop because she was trying to take measurements. It's just like, but it's just, Keisha didn't want to take that leap, and it's like her sister knew, like, right, I'm gonna set this up for you anyway, because I know you're gonna change your mind, or at least she was going to still help. Like, she wanted this to happen for Keisha because she knew how important this was for Keisha. And Keisha's like, now there's a level of guilt, because it's like, right, she wasn't even where she was supposed to be at that time. She was there, because that even makes Tariq feel a little weird, because for him it's like, I've had to hold on to this anger for so long. He's like, if it wasn't, I barely kept myself in one piece after Kenya died, and it's like, he had to be there for his daughters and help them through it. but also like having to look at Keisha, and Keisha be a constant reminder of she was coming home from the coffee shop because of you, because she was trying to help you out. That's why she wasn't where she was supposed to be. But I think it's just the situation of Tariq is doing what he needs to move on, because he's telling Keisha, like, you're so holding on to this, like, you won't. He's not telling her to let go of her sister, but it's like what she's feeling, these feelings connected to Kenya, like she's boxed people out, she's cut everyone out of her life, she's dedicated herself to work. It's like, you haven't even come to you used to not miss any of your niece's recitals, you used to smile, your absence is hurting them. And it's because you've doubled down and worked. Because for her, it's like, right, I'm going to go work for the government. I'm going to make sure that people who should be locked up stay locked up. It's like, and for him, it's like, people aren't good or bad. In his mind, they're messy. And that's the thing, like, humans are complicated, because the thing is, there are people who just simply will make the wrong decision. Like, it's just, we are our choices, And so we sometimes we make good choices, sometimes we make bad choices, and then we have to live with the regret of, like, making those bad choices. But Keisha she was driven by the need to make sure people who are locked up stay locked up, and that's why, like, she's still viewing the 4400 as, because she knows there's something that's going on there that they still don't understand, so they're a threat. And how she responds to threats, like the guy that killed her sister, is still like, is indicative of that as well. So she's like, they are completely separate things, but for her in this particular day, like, because her head isn't in the right place, like, everything's blurring together, so the 4400 are getting the same treatment in her head like the guy that killed her sister, because it's like, right, you're like, there's a risk here, and I'm not willing to take the risk because if I let you guys out, something terrible could happen. And it's just like, right, like, she's not just looking at them as the complicated people that they are, and not just like, yeah, they're from complicated circumstances. Like I said, I think any other day she'd at least be a little more flexible, but it's because of everything going on with the guy who killed her sister and Tariq wanting to see him. Like, I think that just kind of sent her in a flurry. Like I said, it set her on fire in the sense of, like, everything that she's always been feeling to some extent, all of that kind of got heightened even more in this episode. But kind of seeing things from a different perspective now. Probably the thing, going to see Hayden later on, and it all made her perspective change, because she's the one that kind of co-signs Hayden going to stay with Logan, Mariah, and Bridget. But and she even talks to Tariq about, like, whatever you need to kind of heal. She's just not there yet, because she's still trying to figure things out, because the whole episode kind of put her in perspective, because she actually opened up to Jarrell too, because it's like, right, like Tariq said, like, stop, like, if you don't, like, basically you keeping so much bottled up to yourself, because the person she could go to about this stuff was her sister. Without her sister, she didn't have anyone she could really open up to like that, because she kept a lot of that bottled up. And so she finally opens up to Jarrell. It's like, yeah, you're kind of you annoy me sometimes, but I know I can trust you, we're partners in all of this. So I thought that was interesting. Her and Shanice did talk a little bit about, once again, the whole Logan thing of, like, how awkward the situation is, but both of them having kind of somewhat awkward and complicated days, You also had LaDonna properly apologizing to Soraya, which Soraya's like, I totally get it. Like, she works for the government because she wants to be able to be there to help people like the 4400, people who get viewed a certain way, because you guys shouldn't be treated the way you are. She's like, I'm a queer Muslim woman working for the government, so that comes with its own complications, but I'm in this job because I want to make it so that the viewing lens isn't complicated for someone else, who doesn't get just treated a certain way because of the government. So, but she understands why LaDonna did what she did, but also it's like admires her skills for being able to accomplish what she accomplished. She's like, right, if I had a job, I hire you just so I can fire you for what, making that type of mistake. But it's like, no, she understands, and kind of, it's like, at the end of the day, I am on your side. I hope it isn't a thing where Soraya's actually been flipped. That's what I was kind of worried about this episode, that in actuality, the government kind of broke her down to the point it's like, right, you're going to help us going forward. Still could be a possibility, but I want to believe that Soraya's like, no, I legitimately am on your side. I always have been. So they probably will be able to go to her eventually, because LaDonna wanted to go to her earlier this episode about the whole Manny, like the equations and stuff like that. It's like, oh, do you have a computer program we could kind of run this through? But now that they're in a better place, maybe. But I think LaDonna's probably going to be a little more careful about what she does. I mean, I think it's kind of indicative of her character of just kind of doing stuff without really like thinking about the aftermath or the consequences of it necessarily. But I think this episode might put LaDonna in a different headspace going forward, realizing like, yeah, there are consequences to your actions. Like, you just never thought about the byproduct of it, like what it would mean for everyone in the grand scheme of things. So there's that. But we also have Hayden moving in, and for him, he knows what he's going to do tomorrow. He's going to be going to break Mildred out of where she is, because her and Noah still haven't been returned. And Keisha said she was still working on trying to find out any information about what's going on. But because I think the guy, Mr. Green, is the liaison from that place, isn't he? That medical place. But it turns out letting the 4400 go was never like, oh, it's like, no. We're not letting them go. They're just out in a bigger cage. He wants them to, because the government knows a lot more is going on here. And so they're trying to figure out, like, what are these people's secrets? So we're going to let them out, make them seem like they're free without them realizing there are chains, bound to them, invisible chains they don't even know yet. Like, we always got an eye on them and just get to see them in the natural world and see, either paint them as the threat that they really are, or just study them like they're animals in a zoo or something, So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.